which is so obvious. And by the way, your ratings are going to be massive tonight. I'm just saying, you know how hard it is to behold this audience?
I had nothing to do with it, but
You're getting paid for not working tonight. Wow.
I love it. Three cups of coffee.
Great show as always. Welcome to Hannity. President Trump wrapping up a huge enthusiastic rally in Minnesota. We'll show you all the highlights. That's coming up tonight, including his comments, all important comments on immigration. Now, earlier today, the president signed an executive order ending the separation of children and parents who cross our border illegally, but not before Democrats and the so-called mainstream media went off the rails. In moments, we're going to show you just how insane and unhinged the left and the media has become. Even the president's 12-year-old son, a target of a repugnant attack. And we'll also reveal a blatant double standard in the media. In fact, the press gave a pass to the beloved Barack Obama, the anointed one, over his border tactics, including, you guessed it, separating children from their parents. We have the evidence tonight. And also, anti-Trump deep state sycophant Peter Strzok, he is in huge trouble. Earlier, we reported that he was escorted out of the FBI headquarters. Well, next week, the disgraced FBI agent could be forced to testify before Congress. Bad news for Andrew McCabe, James Comey, and, yeah, even Robert Mueller and his witch hunters themselves. After all, Strzok is at the very center of what is a tangled web of nothing but corruption and extreme bias, to influence a presidential election. Now, we're just at the precipice of the biggest scandal in modern political history. It's only getting started, right? We have a jam-packed edition. I know the president's not doing my hour tonight like Tucker of Hannity tonight. We begin with our important breaking news opening monologue. Now, the president's raucous rally that you saw right here on Fox just ended, but you wouldn't know it if you were watching the mainstream media. CNN, they barely covered it. And conspiracy TV, MSNBC, literally acted like it wasn't happening. Now, by the way, of course, we brought you the rally, including when the president took Democrats, the mainstream media, to task for their blatant hypocrisy over the topic of immigration. And one of the reasons the media didn't cover it, they would have been called out for all of their lies and the fact that they're missing the biggest story in American history. Take a look.
Democrats don't care about the impact of uncontrolled migration on your communities, your schools, your hospitals, your jobs, or your safety. Democrats put illegal immigrants before they put American citizens. We've already started the wall. We got $1.6 billion. The wall has been started. San Diego and lots of different places. And we go, but boy, it's tough. They want to do anything they can to obstruct and to make sure it doesn't happen, but it's happening. It's happening.
Now, for days, the so-called members of the press, the Destroy Trump media, along with their friends in the Democratic Party, they have been in a complete, utter, insane meltdown over reports that children were being separated from parents at the border after being detained for crossing the border illegally. And I've said numerous times this week, no one ever wants to see, ever, a kid separated from their parents. Nobody wants to see that. And earlier today, and by the way, the president has been saying it all week, the president addressed this important issue, and he signed an executive order undoing their damage and ensuring that illegal immigrant families would be kept intact. By the way, not his law. He didn't pass it. Congress did. Another president signed it, but he fixed it. Take a look.
Border security will be equal, if not greater than previously. So we're going to have strong, very strong borders, but we're going to keep the families together. I didn't like the sight or the feeling of families being separated. There's a problem that's gone on for many years, as you know, through many administrations, and we're working very hard on immigration. This has been going on for 60 years. 60 years, nobody's taken care of it. Nobody's had the political courage to take care of it, but we're going to take care of it.
So today, the president undid the damage Congress mandated and a previous president signed. Now, this order fills a void vacated by Congress, which has totally dropped the ball when it comes to both illegal immigration and legal immigration. Now it's time for these lazy, obstructionist members of Congress to step up and do their job. And that's a permanent solution. Fix our broken immigration system. And by the way, if we're going to do it, let's do it right. If we're going to do it, any bill needs to literally point out what the president laid out. And by the way, go back to a State of the Union address. Secure the border, build the wall. The problem is solved completely, but it must be completely funded and constructed, and the money, well, I don't trust these guys. Get it up front or no deal. And by the way, all the loopholes have got to be closed that are used by criminals and terrorists and enemies of this country to ever enter the country. And that includes ending the visa lottery system. That includes ending catch and release of illegal immigrants. They'll never show up to court. Eliminating chain migration. And then, and only then, okay, the Democrats will win something too. They'll get their concessions on DACA. And by the way, the issue of child-parent separation will end forever, something we all say we want. Now, the wall, the lotto system, the visa lottery, the end of catch and release, they can't be talking points. Congress, we're on to you. We're watching you. We know you often lie in your talking points and say one thing, and it never matches the fine print of the bill. So don't play these swamp games. The American people are now hip to your little lies. Everything that we're talking about needs to be straightforward, fully legislated, and enacted before any so-called DACA compromise. And now, without a wall, without border enforcement, well, the problems at the wall will never go away, ever. And sadly, that we have to see all of this through the prism of the midterm elections. Everything you're seeing and hearing from politicians and on these fake news networks is about 2018. And instead of passing legislation and permanently fixing a big problem for the country, immigration, well, you've got many Democrats. They'd rather use this issue to malign their political opponents and never solve the problem, which fits perfectly into their brand of identity politics. They want the American people to believe, as they do every 2 to 4 years, Republicans are racist, they are sexist, they're misogynist, xenophobic, Islamophobic, and they want dirty air and water, and they want to kill your children and push your grandmother over a cliff. You hear those lies every 2 and 4 years. I've played the history of this so many times on this show. Let me tell you the 4 things that will happen, by the way. You let Democrats win this election, this midterm, and guess what's going to happen? This is their agenda. Number 1, they want to impeach the president, but they're not going to tell you that. They've told every Democrat, stop Maxine Waters from saying impeach 45. They want to do it, but they won't tell you. The rest of their agenda, they want open borders. They want to keep Obamacare. And just like Nancy Pelosi said, they want to roll back the tax cuts and steal those crumbs back, as she called them, that the president gave you in the tax cut bill. Now, earlier today, the president exposed what is the Democrats and the media's blatant hypocrisy. Look at the video that the president tweeted. This is kind of priceless. Take a look.
Our immigration system is broken.
Illegal immigration is wrong, plain and simple.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country.
The people who should be here are those who come legally.
We have to send a clear message. Just because your child gets across the border, that doesn't mean the child gets to stay.
Oh, so the presidents and the Democrats and the media, they all play politics. Now, this president has vowed to fix the immigration crisis in this country. But that didn't stop your media from going completely off the rails insane. Listen to a clip. NBC News reporter Lester Holt interviewing a Border Patrol chief. This is outrageous. Watch this.
You feel like the bad guy in this to some extent? I mean, you are the instrument of a policy that is obviously very controversial right now.
A bad guy? Okay, Lester, maybe you ought to get out of that studio once in a while. I've been to the border 12 times, all across, Rio Grande to San Diego. I've been in the drug warehouses. I've been out when they have arrested gang members, and I've been out in the drug warehouses, floor to ceiling, all laid at the altar of going to our kids. Lester, no wonder why you're not #1 in news anymore. You know what? Risking his life? Yeah, he's saving our kids from drugs and those people that have bad intentions that cross our open border. And it gets so much worse. We are talking about a full-on psychotic meltdown. Holocaust comparisons, some 22 of them. Slavery comparisons. Well, you have to see it to believe it. Check out this insanity.
Donald Trump, without a doubt, is pure evil. When you played the tapes of what was heard a couple of days ago in the centers, it's horrific. How can people do that? That hasn't happened in this country since the time of slavery. It hasn't happened in the world since the time of the Nazis. And Donald Trump is right there with them.
This is as if George Wallace had won in 1968. The one through line here from Charlottesville to this issue is, to use your phrase, a return to the most disturbing elements of white supremacy, white male supremacy to be precise, in the national character.
Overnight, they've now created criminals. So people are trying to understand what's happening here. That's what happened. And you know what? Elie Wiesel, may he rest in peace, what he said to me was, he said, you know, the Nazis had it perfectly correct. They declared us an illegal people. That's how it began.
I don't want little children ripped from their parents' arms. I don't want them marched off to, quote, showers.
When you look at this historically throughout American history, no matter the policy you're talking about, the separation of families has always been something that speaks to a level of inhumanity. If you go back to slavery.
By the way, Liberal Joe thinks he's a conservative. Now, if you can believe it, the reaction from some on the left was even so much worse and so much more disgusting. Now, by the way, I have to warn you, I have kids at home, and I hate ever saying turn off the channel or just be careful. What I'm about to show you is not suitable for kids. Actor Peter Fonda, remember Hanoi Jane, brother of him, tweeted about Donald Trump's DHS secretary, Kristen Nielsen. Kristen Nielsen is a lying bleep that should be put in a cage and poked at by passerbys. The bleep should be pilloried in Lafayette Square, naked, whipped by passerby while being filmed for posterity. And then he continued his rant. And this time, he turned his sick, twisted, ugly, vicious rage towards a 12-year-old kid. And by the way, the president and Melania Trump's son, Barron. We should rip Barron Trump from his mother's arms and put him in a cage with pedophiles and see if his mother will stand up against the giant bleep she is married to. 90 million people in the streets on the same weekend in the country bleep. Okay, disgusting. Now, rightfully, the First Lady has every right to protect her child. And by the way, making terroristic threats against the First Family, that's actually illegal. And she contacted the Secret Service after that horrible tweet. And Peter Fonda then lately, perhaps sobered up, deleted the tweet, later apologized, saying in part he went too far. Peter, too far? Well, you could be arrested for those words. And frankly, you probably should be. And here's the big question of the day. Where's Nancy Pelosi? Where's Elizabeth Warren? Where is the champion of women, Hillary Clinton? Where's the outrage from the so-called compassionate left? Now, Peter Fonda's comments are sick, twisted, ugly, demented, and this is the insanity coming from America's left. And there's a lot more. Look at Occupy Wall Street, promoting the murdering of ICE agents. A member of Antifa publishing a list of 1,500 ICE agents' personal information, blasting it all over Twitter. They're going to get somebody killed here. This is not a game. And then this happened. Donald Trump's DHS secretary, Kristen Nielsen, who's following the laws of Congress, the laws of the land, literally is run out of a restaurant last night by a group of leftist protesters. And we have the video. Watch this left-wing insanity.
Secretary Nielsen, how dare you spend your evening here eating dinner as you're complicit in the separation and deportation of over 10,000 children separated from their parents? How can you enjoy a Mexican dinner as you're deporting and imprisoning tens of thousands of people who come here seeking asylum in the United States? We call on you to end family separation and abolish ICE.
Homeland Security Secretary Kirsten Nielsen is in a Mexican restaurant of all places. The goal. Shame on you. Shame, 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 shame. Fascist pig.
Hillary, Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren, where are you? Where's the Me Too movement right now tonight? And the assault and the horrific, vicious things that are being said here. Which brings us to a very important point. While the left, the media literally blows up over the Trump administration's, quote, border tactics, and they're obeying the law, they were very quiet when Obama was their president. The images we're about to show you, take a look at this. Children in cages, sleeping in cages. without their parents being there at all. Many separated from their parents. These images, they weren't taken after Donald Trump was sworn into office. No, we checked it out today. The Daily Caller printed a lot of these. This was under Barack Hussein Obama. Those pictures are from the Obama administration, and this is how they detained illegal immigrants and children. In fact, one such Obama-era policy actually detained minors without their parents 4 months before releasing them back to their home countries. And remember, it was President Obama who prosecuted, nearly 500,000 illegal immigrants, not Donald Trump. It was Obama who said he was merely enforcing the laws that he alone can't change. And even if they create great damage, he's compelled to enforce the laws of Congress. Remember, he said all of this.
There are those in the immigrants' rights community who have argued passionately that we should simply provide those who are illegally with legal status, or at least ignore the laws on the books. But I believe such an indiscriminate approach would be both unwise and unfair. When I talk to immigration advocates, they wish I could just bypass Congress and change the law myself. But that's not how democracy works. Believe me, the idea of doing things on my own is very tempting. I promise you, not just on immigration reform. But that's not how our system works. I'm the President of the United States. I'm not the Emperor of the United States. My job is to execute laws that are passed.
My job to execute laws that are passed. I'm not the emperor. That's exactly, by the way, what Donald Trump signed today, let me be blunt. It'll last 5 minutes in a courtroom before it's thrown out. But at least gives Congress time to do their job. We're going to have more on immigration throughout the show tonight. But first, we have something else to bring you that the left, the mainstream media, is barely touching. And by the way, one of the biggest stories of our lifetime, of course, the Inspector General's report, totally vindicating the president's decision not only to fire James Comey, but the IG corroborating everything we have told you for months on this show that the rest of the media never talked about. A two-tier justice system, a rampant deep state bias, an attempt to literally create a soft coup in America and prop up one candidate and destroy the other candidate. And you tell me Watergate's a big deal? And so much more. The mainstream media, well, they couldn't care less. Look at the headline from Newsbusters today. On Monday, CBS News totally ignored the IG Horowitz first testimony since the release of the IG report. And after 2 days of damning testimony from the IG, Michael Horowitz, and so many new revelations surrounding Peter Strzok, yesterday, your friends at ABC so-called news, Georgie Stephanopoulos' place, NBC News, they avoided covering Strzok at all. The guy at the center of the biggest corruption scandal in American history. Of course, we know one of the most central figures, of course, was the anti-Trump FBI agent Peter Strzok, and I doubt he's going to testify. Let's see if he chooses the right to remain silent. Now, we showed you a detailed timeline last night revealing what is rampant bias shared between Strzok and his FBI lawyer girlfriend, Lisa Page, including clear instances where Peter Strzok, the head of both investigations, was vowing to work against Strzok and protected Hillary from known felonies. Now, remember, Strzok was also the lead agent in her case. That is the server investigation. And then immediately thereafter tapped for the lead role in the FBI's Trump-Russia investigation, rendering, by the way, illegitimate Mueller's investigation. He cleared Hillary, who committed literally felonies one after another. He vowed to protect, by the way, and he worked against Donald Trump and tried to destroy him. And that was all in the context of a presidential election. That sounds like a big deal to me in a lot of different ways. Oh, and by the way, as he's trying to protect Hillary Clinton, isn't it interesting that it didn't work out? Anyway, as we scroll forward, remember, Strzok was the lead agent in Hillary's server investigation, then tapped for the lead here. Okay, nobody in the media is telling you any of this. He clears one person. Think about this. In the context of a presidential election, targeting Donald Trump, who eventually becomes president. All right, now as we move on, he will be called to testify before Congress. And by the way, the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte is reportedly ready to issue a subpoena My prediction, he ain't going to talk. Just a guess. He will join us in a few minutes of the upcoming showdown. And of course, we also know Strzok is just the tip of the FBI's high-level corruption. In fact, the IG referred 5 agents for investigation over rampant anti-Trump actions. And Strzok's pending testimony could blow the lid off this deep state house of cards, which this is all beginning to collapse. People are going to go to jail over this. In other words, we're now created a deep state firing squad. And we're learning another wrinkle in the deep state scandal. It surrounds Christopher Steele. Guess what? Christopher Steele, the foreign spy who the Clinton campaign paid for to produce phony Russian lies against Trump. Well, that guy, infamously known as the dossier creator, filled with those Russian lies. Well, Steele, by the way, he was welcomed at Obama's State Department just days before the 2016 election, where he allegedly briefed officials. So what did John Kerry know? What did Obama know? When did they know it? Because you know what? What did they do with this phony information? And by the way, when is the media going to start talking about all of this? And more importantly, what is the next shoe to drop in all of this? We have so much more to come in what is the biggest political scandal in your lifetime, and you at the forefront of seeing it. All right, former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer joins us, the author of Why We Fight, Recovering America's Will to Win, Sebastian Gorka, and senior fellow with the London Center for Policy Research, Monica Crowley. Sean Spicer, let's first go to the absolute venom of people on the left and the lack of coverage of the biggest story in their lifetime and the lack of telling the American people the truth about Obama's separation policies.
Well, I thought your monologue was spot on. I mean, it's unbelievable what the left says and does and gets zero outrage and zero coverage. And I think most of it is because, as you kind of pointed out in the monologue, the media agrees with it. And when they agree with it, they ignore it. And they almost, in some cases, I think they mistakenly retweet it or like it because they forget that people actually can see some of those tweets. But it's amazing to me the lack of outrage. I mean, these people, you pointed out the Peter Fonda tweet. There's so many more where they use disparaging language, make threats, and yet there's zero coverage. Yet anything that's done on the right by the president or any of his supporters is called out and asked for an immediate apology and has to be denounced. The way in which they view the same kind of outrage is unbelievable. There's zero when it comes to people on the left. And it's, everyone needs to be denounced, and we have to have boycotts and censor the people on the right whenever they do anything. And I'm not excusing any of the behavior on the right. Don't get me wrong. I think when people do something wrong,
I'm sorry,
they step over the line, they should be called out. But it is unbelievable what happens on the left, the way they get away with it.
You think about this, Monica. Okay, talking about raping a woman, talking about kidnapping the first son, 12 years old, and putting him in a cage with pedophiles. And then there was even an assassination, CBS reported, a real threat against the president today. Is the rhetoric connected to it by these people on the left?
We are so far beyond normal politics, Sean, and the reason is because Donald Trump, from the moment he came down that escalator in June 2015, represented a serious existential threat to the ruling class on all sides, and that includes the mainstream media. And from that moment on to this very day, their mission has been to destroy him, everybody around him, discredit his presidency, destroy his voters, smear them as well, because he must not be allowed to succeed. And that's why you see this kind of over-the-top extreme reaction. Their first response to anything this president says or does is always to reach for the most extreme rhetoric and actions, and Monica. That's not going to end anytime soon.
Monica stays with us. Sean Spicer stays with us. Dr. Gorka, I promise you're up first when we get back. Also an exclusive interview with Bob Goodlatte. What is he going to do with Peter Strzok and Jim Jordan? Stay with us. Busy News Night. My opening monologue, although I kind of really did.
Is this what you do to the Singapore crew, Sean? Really?
I know you traveled 24 hours in the air both ways for our audience. I love you. Don't worry.
The hypocrisy. Can we have some honesty about this immigration issue? So suddenly, the left, Peter Fonda included, care about minorities and care about children. What about the 60 million children that have died in the womb since Roe v. Wade? What about the money they spend on Planned Parenthood? 19 million African Americans killed in the womb. That's how they care about minorities. But let's forget about pregnant women and embryos, if they want to call them embryos. When did we hear the left talk about Nisa or Kyla, the 15-year-old beautiful girls that were murdered in Long Island by gang members born abroad? I didn't hear them protest about needing to protect American children from gang members. The hypocrisy, the rank hypocrisy tells you one thing, Sean. They are desperate. They have no message for November. The economy, the rally was incredible. The things that the president rallied off about the economy, North Korea, raising the pay of our military, they are desperate. And this is a very good sign of how desperate they are.
I don't have a lot of time tonight because we did go long in the opening segment. But Sean, you know this media. You know why fake news CNN didn't want to cover this? And they only dipped in occasionally, and why MSNBC, same thing? I'll tell you why. Because they would be exposed in the president's speech and rally for being the liars that they are.
Well, look, I think you pointed out in the monologue. The bottom line is the president's getting results, whether it's the economy or in foreign policy, and I think the media has made it very personal. They don't like him. They never like conservatives. We knew that, but this is very personal to them. They don't like him, and they're not going to do anything they can to talk about the results that he's getting for the American people. I'm glad he took the action today. The images of watching children was horrible, and it was heart-wrenching. I'm glad he took that action today to make it happen. I hope Congress follows up on the president's actions. But it's what the media is doing and what the left is getting away with is something that's just something I'm speechless at it.
All right, we're going to leave it there. By the way, Monica, somebody said the nicest thing about you today. I'll tell you about it later. Thank you for being with us, all of you. Dr. Gorka, our Singapore friend. All right, as we mentioned in our opening monologue, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Bob Goodlatte, says a subpoena could soon be issued for the Trump-hating FBI agent Peter Strzok. Chairman Goodlatte joins us right now to explain. Mr. Chairman, to me, there are more questions than there are answers, number one. And number two, in spite of Strzok's lawyer saying, oh, yeah, we're going to willingly come before the committee, I don't believe that for 10 seconds. Let's see it before I'll believe it.
Are you asking me that?
Yes, sir.
Well, because absolutely he's got to appear before the committee. We believe we have an agreement for him to appear next week. It's important that he appear for an interview, and then we'll have a public hearing after that. And we are prepared to issue a subpoena for anything that's necessary to do. But if he appears voluntarily, we're good. But if he reneges, he'll see a subpoena immediately.
Sir, let me ask you, because there was a meeting last Friday. I understand you were in that meeting, along with Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy and Speaker Ryan and Rod Rosenstein. And you were promised documents, according to published reports, sir. And those documents that you have been subpoenaing and requesting, and Trey Gowdy has been, and Devin Nunes has, they promised them this week, or you guys promised that you will, in fact, hold them in contempt and perhaps issue articles of impeachment as it relates to Rod Rosenstein for their obstruction and unwillingness to abide by congressional subpoenas. And why do I think if I did it, I don't think I'd get away with it?
I don't think anybody should get away with it. I also believe that we have, thanks to John Losh, the U.S. attorney from Chicago, we have a much better situation. We have now access to over 1 million documents in a room at the Department of Justice that we can see unredacted, and then we can point to individual documents and demand that they be produced. But there are other things in that subpoena where we specifically asked for. Some have been complied with, some not. And the Speaker made it very clear that if they didn't produce them this week, that they would face the resolution which has already been introduced.
All right. Well, Mr. Goodlatte, I want to thank you for what you're doing. And if we don't get those documents, I hope you hold them accountable. And I believe you will. I know you meant what you said. Joining us with more, Ohio Congressman, Freedom Caucus member Jim Jordan. Congressman Jordan, I don't see the documents presented. And we now have all the evidence we need. Hillary, it's irrefutable, committed felonies. Lead investigator Strzok exonerated her long before he ever interviewed her or the witnesses. which means the fix was in. And then they tried to smash and destroy Donald Trump, the other candidate. And I can't think of a worse abuse of power or corruption scandal in American history. Maybe you can help me out.
No, you're right. The same 6 people, the key people who ran the Clinton investigation, then ran the Russian investigation. Think about this, Sean. Jim Comey's been fired. Deputy Director McCabe has been fired, faces a criminal referral, lied 3 times under oath. Chief of Staff Jim Rubicki has left the FBI. General Counsel Jim Baker demoted and has now left the FBI. Lisa Page, FBI counsel, demoted, now left the FBI. And, of course, Peter Strzok, Deputy Head of Counterintelligence, demoted, and a couple days ago escorted from the FBI. So when have you ever seen a federal agency where 6 of the top people ran the 2 most important investigations I've ever heard of? When have you ever seen that happen? So, yes, Mr. Goodlatte's exactly right. If they don't give us the documents, we are going to pass a resolution on the House floor. The Speaker's been clear about this.
How soon?
It'll happen next week if they don't do it. The Speaker has been clear. We will pass that, and the whole House will go on record saying, Mr. Rosenstein, give us what we're entitled to have to get answers for the American people. And then if he still doesn't do that, then it's contempt. And then finally, the ultimate leverage we have and ultimate pressure we have.
And you're telling the American people tonight, you will do all of this. This is not a game. This is Jim Jordan giving his word.
Well, but it's the Speaker of the House. This is Devin Nunes. This is Chairman Goodlatte. These are the people in the House who say,
I agree.
We have a right to get that. And the full House will. The resolution has been filed by Mr. Meadows and I and several others. Mr. Meadows filed it last week. That's what has to happen first.
So apparently there was a little bit of a showdown and then on Capitol Hill on the floor today between Mark Meadows and who's the chairman of the Freedom Caucus and Speaker Ryan. And apparently it was about the talking points that are being fed to the president and the American people about immigration don't match up with the bill. Are we being lied to and misled again by Republicans?
Sean, I wasn't a part of it. Normally, I would be a part of that conversation with Mark. I wasn't on the floor this time. Mark and the Speaker had a conversation.
Have you seen the bill? Do they match the talking points, which is what this is about?
I haven't had a chance to fully review the bill yet. That's both bills that are going to be on the floor tomorrow. But what I do know is Chairman Goodlatte's first piece of legislation is the one that is consistent with the mandate of the 2016 election, more importantly, consistent with what we told the American people we were going to do, because it does all the good borders, builds the wall, stops the chain migration, stops the visa, all those good things.
Okay, the most important thing is the money for the wall up front, all of it.
It has to be. It has to be in both bills, but the first bill is the one I think is the best bill. That's one I'm supporting.
All right. By the way, I know you were a wrestler, in college? You only lost 1 match all your life?
I lost more than that in college. I lost more than that in college. High school. That was a long time ago, Sean.
And listen, I've got my 2nd-degree brown belt, mixed martial arts. I don't think I'm messing with you. Wrestlers are tough.
I wouldn't mess with you. Thanks, Sean.
All right. Thank you, Congressman. When we come back, more highlights of the president's incredible rally tonight. So much energy in that room. Sarah Carter, David Schoen. We got a lot of people legally in jeopardy. This has only just begun, actually. Straight ahead.
Peter Strzok and his lover, Lisa Page. I don't think their wife and husband are too happy about that. What do you think? What do you think? I don't think so. No, but have you been seeing this whole scam? Do you believe what you're seeing? How, no matter what she did, no matter how many crimes she committed, which were numerous, they wanted her to be innocent. With me, nothing. No collusion, no nothing. And they just wanted to take all of us. They wanted to put us in trouble. And it's not working too well, I'll tell you. Disgusting.
The president earlier tonight talking about the IG report. Joining us now with reaction, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, civil rights and criminal defense attorney David Schoen. All right. This is only the tip of the iceberg. You just heard from Jim Jordan, Bob Goodlatte. We know this war is going on behind the scenes, Sarah. And we also know that there are going to ultimately be not only criminal referrals, but if there's justice in America, there's going to be indictments of some of the highest level people in the FBI.
I think that's really significant, Sean, because this is like the first time in American history, in modern American history, where we've seen this. One of the important things that I think developed this past week is what Mark Meadows disclosed was the fact that there's a possibility that the 302s, which we mentioned before on your show, those are the interviews that Peter Strzok conducted with General Mike Flynn or other witnesses in this case. Now, Meadows didn't specifically talk about Flynn's case in particular, but that 302s may have been altered, both in the Clinton investigation and in the Trump investigation. So if that turns out to be the case, that is an extraordinary violation, and it could be a Giglio violation, which if that's the case, I mean, if it's in Flynn's case, it could mean that the judge could throw the case right out.
Pretty amazing. Let's go to the legal criminal side of this. David Schoen, I don't think I'd want to be any of these people at this particular point in time, but a big caveat here, if there's equal justice under the law. And by the way, that would also mean that Hillary would also be charged with felonies even today.
That's right. And of course, it is a big if, unfortunately, but let's hope justice prevails. Let's not make the mistake, though, of marginalizing Strzok and these others. What the Inspector General identified is an entire culture of corruption and bias. They're bad apples, but it's not a question of a few bad apples. Let's be forward-thinking and not reactive, because what we know for sure is Mr. Mueller handpicked a committee to make up his special counsel team that has the exact same agenda. We should demand the emails, especially those who were former Justice Department employees, like Mr. Weissman and others, demand their emails. I would imagine we would see some things similar to what Mr. Strzok, Ms. Page, Agent 2, Agent 5, Mr. McCabe wrote and spoke about. Stop Trump agenda.
Is this illegitimate, the entire, since the get-go is literally the fix in for Hillary, rigged an investigation, and then immediately the same people start the sledgehammer on Donald Trump to destroy him? Does that render everything Mueller's doing illegitimate or question the legitimacy of it? And if you're an attorney for any of these guys, do you not go to a judge and say, Judge, this is predicated on a prejudice that existed from the get-go, therefore none of this should be admissible?
Absolutely. The United States Supreme Court in Kiles versus Whitley said the integrity of the investigation is always at issue and must always be at issue in a case. The investigation is what informs a prosecutor's decision and ultimately the discretion. But again, we know that these same people have that same agenda. There's just no question about it.
Yeah. Let me go to Sarah. Sarah, you have some breaking news as it relates to General Flynn and his story. Wow. Nobody thought he lied, but yet he got charged with lying.
Yeah, and he pleaded guilty. I mean, he was strong-armed, according to the sources that I've spoken to. I mean, he lost millions of dollars trying to defend himself. He had to sell his home.
Lost his home, by the way.
Yeah, he lost his home. His family was threatened. So there was a lot of reasons why General Flynn would just want this over with. And it was such a flimsy charge because, according to Comey himself, behind closed doors, the agents didn't believe that he was lying. But then you have to ask yourself this. Peter Strzok was one of those agents that interviewed Flynn. Peter Strzok is still up and hopefully will be subpoenaed and hopefully will speak to Congress. But he was already tainted. When he went into that interview, he wanted to take people down in the Trump administration. And so I believe that everything that he touched was tainted. And I don't know what his attorneys are going to do, but certainly something is going to come of this.
All right, guys. Thank you both for being with us.
The IG said there's a huge cloud. Thank you.
We'll never give up on this story. And I'm telling you, now the real hard work of justice begins. That's the interesting part of all this. When we come back, the ever so shy, the ever demure, non-controversial Roger Stone. He's up next. Witch hunt counsel Robert Mueller reportedly examining a previously undisclosed meeting set up between Trump associate Roger Stone and a Russian figure who allegedly tried to sell information on Hillary Clinton. By the way, this was not disclosed by Stone or former Trump aide Michael Caputo during their interviews with the House Intel Committee. And based on a pair of letters from attorneys for Stone and Caputo, they now believe, the guy was an FBI spy informant trying to set him up. Here to explain more, the author of a brand new book, Stone's Rules, the ever so shy, demure, and non-controversial Roger Stone. All right, so you're kind enough to send me your book. Every chapter is about how you dress. Roger, I wear jeans and T-shirts, except for this hour of my day. I broke every rule.
Yeah, but you've got good taste in neckties, Sean, so it's okay.
Half of them are Trump ties, way before the election, by the way. You know, when I first heard the headline, I'm like, okay, why didn't they tell? And then as I read it, and I talked to Michael Caputo about it, why don't you just tell? So you met with some guy that said he had dirt on Hillary.
Michael Caputo contacted me, and he said that he had been contacted by a man using an alias, as it turns out, Henry Greenberg, who had information that he said would be of great value to the Trump campaign. I met with him, and it turned out.
By the way, this is important. Every congressman would take the call if they got that call. Oh, we got info on your op research on your opponent.
Well, and in a presidential year, I mean, I was writing a book, The Making of the President. I was starring in a Netflix documentary. I was appearing once a day on InfoWars, where we're fighting a terrific war against net censorship. But I took the meeting, and Henry Greenberg turns out to be an FBI informant of Russian descent who's been admitted to the country 9 times on informant visas, who is a violent felon, who otherwise could not be in the country. And then he tries to entrap me, but he gives away the game when he says he wants $2 million for negative information on Hillary. When I tell him I don't have $2 million, he says, it's not your money I want, it's Donald Trump's money.
Did you ever bring it to Donald Trump?
I think it's the first known example of the Peter Strzok insurance policy. I think it was an FBI plant seeking to compromise, and I think to entrap me and to compromise Trump. I never mentioned this to the president.
Why didn't you mention it earlier? And again, your lawyer said you spoke honestly and truthfully. It never came up in the hearing. Why didn't you bring it up?
Well, in all honesty, remember, this is in May of 2016, which is prior to Hillary raising Russophobia. I simply didn't remember it. But since the results of the meeting don't produce anything illegal or improper, I have no reason to dissemble or to hide it. I merely forgot it. The more important question is, why is a government informant who's been admitted into the country 9 times on FBI-sponsored visas coming to see me at all? It's a setup.
You know, this is between the spies in the campaign and everything else we now know, I want the answer to your question. Why? Why was this guy trying to set you up? Now, you never told the president, correct?
I never mentioned this to candidate Trump or President Trump. Rudy Giuliani is exactly right about that because it was such a ludicrous idea. I turned him down flatly. The Washington Post accurately reported that. I said no dice, not interested. It just smelled like a shakedown. But now we know it was much worse. It was a setup.
This is scary. These are scary times. Stone's Rules, Roger Stone, good to see you. Thanks for being with us. When we come back, more highlights from the president's rally tonight. Straight ahead. During his rally tonight in Minnesota, the president spoke about his successful negotiations with North Korea. Oh, the media ignored that too, as well as the IG report. Take a look.
They stopped shooting missiles over Japan. They stopped all nuclear testing. They stopped nuclear research. They stopped rocketry. They stopped everything that you'd want them to stop, and they blew up sites where they test and do the testing.
Yeah. Oh, they forgot to report all this stuff. All right, we have a lot more tomorrow night. Let not your heart be troubled. There'll always be fair balance. There she is, Laura Ingraham. All right, what wiseacre remark are you going to make about Hannity tonight, Ingraham?
No, I was actually, when the president said they stopped rocketry, I just think of my sons doing the Boy Scouts. You know those little engines and the rockets? I'm like, what's wrong? They can do that. What's okay if they do like rocketry? We just don't want coming toward us.
We had more fun with those phony rockets. You pump them up. Psh, we thought it was the greatest. The crowd went nuts over that, which is pretty interesting.
No, it was fantastic. Awesome show, by the way, Hannity, as always. It's
Welcome back, by the way. Good to have you back.
Oh, fantastic. And good evening from Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle. We have another must-see show for you tonight.